What's up everyone, it's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and I'm here to finally hit back at some fanboys, because I generally try to ignore them as much as possible. Fanboys are stupid, illogical, and just absolutely irrational. And everyone has them. Every company, every brand, whatever has them. Microsoft has them, Sony has them, PC has them, Nintendo has them. Everyone has them, and they're all stupid, usually, and illogical. Now, why or what section am I hitting back at today? Well, I'm specifically aiming this one at the Nintendo fanbase. Not the regular smart Nintendo fanbase. I'm aiming at the illogical, irrational Nintendo fanboys. The Nintendo Defense Force, the NDF. These are the guys I'm aiming at today. Because there are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of these idiots all parroting the same thing online the last couple of days. So what am I talking about, and what specific situation am I going to use as my example? Well, my specific one that I'm going to use is Lawbreakers. Now, if you're not familiar with what Lawbreakers is, it's the new game by Cliff Bleszinski's studio, Boss Key Studios, and it basically plays like a hybrid of Overwatch and Unreal Tournament. And that kind of seems appealing to me, because if you remember a little while back, I made a video talking about why we've gotten rid of the proper fast-paced arena-based shooter. And for the longest time, I thought that Lawbreakers didn't look any good, until I saw it at E3 during the PC gaming show, where it actually looked really fast-paced and really good as an arena-based shooter. I'm not sure on 100% of the stuff because of some of the classes systems and all that, but it remains to be seen as it is at the moment anyway. So why is Lawbreakers the subject of this video? Well, the best way I can describe it is it's the aftermath of an interview that someone at Boss Key Studios recently did with Gaming Bolt. Now, it's not just a standard old PR person or just any random person, or not Cliff Bleszinski himself, but who actually conducted this interview with Gaming Bolt was Dan Nanny. Now, Dan Nanny, that's such a weird name to say fast, is the game's lead designer, so he generally knows what he's talking about. However, he did make a bit of an uninformed and stupid comment. I'm not here to pick apart the comment and destroy him over that, but it's the aftermath and the Nintendo fanboy logic based on what he said and what he clarified and updated. You'll see what I mean now in a second. So, in the interview, Gaming Bolt first asked him, it's like, Lawbreakers isn't coming to Nintendo Switch, right? And Dan had this to say, because we haven't announced that yet, who knows? And then he had a little chuckle about it. So Gaming Bolt says, but if Nintendo Switch sells well, do you think there's a possibility? To which Dan responded when asked about this, there's a possibility for everything and anything in this world. I think the hardest part with the Switch is the controls. Look at the game that we have right now, and we just literally, by the skin of our teeth, put the entire game and the control pad that PlayStation has. Yes, by the way, that's an actual misquote or whatever he said wrong in the actual interview. He said entire game and the control pad. Yeah, that's also wrong. Back to the quote anyway. That means that we could probably make it work for the Xbox One in some way, right? But if you're looking at the Nintendo Switch, the base controller that's on the unit, it doesn't have as many buttons. Now, he was quickly corrected by the entire internet that when you look at the Joy-Cons and you figure both of them put together as one controller, it actually has roughly the same buttons. Now, I say roughly for one reason, is that he originally said that they barely made it work on the PlayStation 4 pad. Now, this could potentially use the touchpad. So when you have the touchpad on the PlayStation 4 controller, you can do it, you can basically work it as maybe 5 buttons. For example, let's look at Killzone Shadowfall. You could, I won't say press the touchpad, but you could use the touchpad to swipe left, swipe up, swipe right, swipe down. They would all do different things. And if you press the touchpad in, it functions like another button. It remains to be seen if those features are going to be used or if they're factored into the button side of it when it comes to Lawbreakers on PS4. But the fact that he said he could probably get it working on an Xbox One controller leads me to believe that it won't use those. Because if you take the touchpad out of the equation, the Xbox One controller still has the same exact amount of buttons as a PlayStation 4 controller. And in the same note, the Nintendo Switch, when you're using either the Pro controller or both Joy-Cons as one controller, again, factoring out the touchpad of the PlayStation 4 Pro or PlayStation 4 pad, the Nintendo Switch has the same amount of buttons. It's got the 2 analog sticks, both which click in, form as buttons. It's got essentially a D-pad, 4 face buttons, and 4 shoulder buttons. And hell, you could even put in the start and options button with the plus and minus if you really want. So he was quickly updated, if you will, when people corrected him on that. And he reversed his comment. He goes, yeah, I didn't realize that it actually had the same amount of buttons. We've never looked into it because it wasn't our focus, and I was wrong. So he says it's a possibility. Now, however, where I start taking exception with this whole thing is that straight away that Nintendo fanboys jumped on this, and their logic was this. Now, real quick before we get into that, actually, like I mentioned earlier in the video, if you're not familiar with Lawbreakers, I should say, you need to know that this is a high-speed, precise, we'll call it three-dimensional because, you know, you're flying through the air in like every different way. You're running along in every different way. You're going forward, back, left, right, up, down. It's not just a standard flat, if you will, third-person shooter. So it's a very high-speed, precise, action-orientated first-person shooter. Now, okay, so you factor all of that in. Think of something along the lines of Unreal Tournament or Quake. It's very like that. Now, what a lot of the Nintendo fanboys were saying was that, oh, well, if that's the case, just make it use the touchscreen. So straight away, here is where their argument starts falling apart. That would mean that if you have to factor in the touchscreen controls as a necessary game mechanic, the game cannot function in docked mode. And the reason for that, or the reason I bring that up, is because these are the people who have been defending the hybrid console aspect of it. These are the people who say the hybrid console is the best thing ever, and yet they're calling for games to not use it and only be available in handheld mode. Now, this is stupid for many reasons, because one, they're expecting a developer to essentially compromise their own product just to fit it onto their hardware. Now, let's look at this, okay? Let's look at the hierarchy of actual performance, the power of these units, okay? And this is objective, because this list I'm about to say real quick is not subjective. This is not up for debate. It is literally fact. It is factual. Everything is finite, and everything in this list is well documented, okay? So you can't call me a fanboy and you can't call me a hater. PC is the most powerful platform, followed by the PlayStation 4, followed by the Xbox One, followed by the Nintendo Switch. That's not taking into consideration the Xbox One X or the PS4 Pro, but you get my point. It goes in that order. And this game, Lawbreakers, is currently only scheduled to release on PC, the most powerful platform, and PlayStation 4, the second most powerful platform. So, what does that mean? If they can barely get this game running on the Xbox One, which is slightly less powerful than the PlayStation 4, for them to dumb it down so much to a point to get it to run on the Nintendo Switch, not even factoring in all the stupid things that people, the fanboys I should say, are asking for when it comes to stuff like, oh, just force it to work in handheld mode, on the even less powerful mode. Because don't forget, handheld mode is less powerful than docked mode, and they want to force it to run on that just to get it onto the console? Or should I say, they want the developers to force it onto that just to get it onto the console. That's absolutely retarded. It's just so unbelievably illogical and dumb. Not to mention, who wants to play a main style game? I say a main style game, a mainstream style game with touch controls. Basically no one. Who wants to play a fast-paced, online, arena-based shooter? Remember, online, fast-paced, high-precision, arena-based shooter with key and vital touch controls. Absolutely fucking no one. It's that simple. There's also other multiple factors that come into this equation. When you have a game, when you design a game, that game has, based on your actual design philosophy and the hardware it's designed for, it has what we can only call, let's call it a window. And this window, this is going to sound really bad because of me using window. This window of performance and the scope of your game, it has both a ceiling, a performance and quality ceiling, as well as a floor, a performance and quality floor. And these are almost set. They almost go hand in hand. And what I mean by that is if you lower the what we call them, not just minimum requirements, but if you lower the minimum spec just to factor stuff in, you begin having to cut content to the extent you have to cut features, you have to cut content, you have to cut technical and mechanical aspects, because when you drag that floor down, you start dragging the ceiling down with it. So in order to drag the floor down to allow this to run on the Nintendo Switch, which, don't forget, is significantly less powerful than Xbox One, not just minorly underneath it, it's actually significantly less powerful. So to get it from the PlayStation 4, let alone the Xbox One, down to the Nintendo Switch, it's going to gimp the game overall. They would have to remove certain features, not just for the Nintendo Switch version of the game, but they'd actually have to remove things from the game. Mechanics, they'd have to remove certain calculations, possible certain movements, possible certain updates. This kind of thing has to be taken into consideration. And you're literally to expect a developer to do that to their own game, to their own design choice, and to their own artistic vision for what the game should be, just to fit on your console that your manufacturer decided to release Underpowered in 2017. And don't forget, I'm not bashing the Nintendo Switch for being underpowered. I'm just using it as a factual example in this. Is absolutely illogical, irrational, and fucking stupid. Because, guys, remember, look at it this way, okay? Boss Key Studios isn't in the wrong here. When Cliffy B and his design team or whatever, when they sat down to design a game, they designed the game, they had it in mind, and they designed it, and they put it on whatever hardware could run their design, and run, we'll call it their dream, their artistic vision, in their acceptable form. The Nintendo Switch, and even the Xbox One, didn't even factor into that. I said it before in another video, and I'll say it again now. When all these companies, all these third-party developers, all these third-party publishers, all these independent developers, whoever it is, when they have a choice to not release a game on a Nintendo platform, specifically the Switch in this case, it's usually down to power in this case. Because when you look at all the modern games that are coming out, most of them just won't run on Nintendo Switch. And when you look at everything that comes out in the modern day, graphically, mechanically, technically, whatever form it is, these companies, these third-party publishers and developers are choosing not to launch it on Nintendo Switch because it would likely compromise their vision, compromise their game, compromise their product. And whose fault is that? I'll give you a quick little clue. It's not the publisher's fault. It's not the developer's fault. It's Nintendo's fault. And you cannot blame these publishers, these developers, for Nintendo's choice. Remember, Nintendo even wanted to release it even more underpowered until Capcom begged them to launch the Nintendo Switch with more RAM in it. So could you imagine if the Nintendo Switch, as we know it, had even less RAM? I believe it was going to have 3 gig instead of 4. So could you imagine that? Or maybe it was even 2 gig instead of 4. But either way, could you imagine if the Nintendo Switch we know now was half as powerful as it already is, or half or 3/4 as powerful as it already is? There'd be even less third-party support than the minor third-party support that it already has. So let's wrap this video up real quick. It's not Boss Key Studios' fault that Lawbreakers won't be on the Nintendo Switch because of power and compromised artistic vision. It's not all these third-party developers and publishers' fault that their games are not appearing on Nintendo Switch because it's not powerful enough to run them. It's Nintendo's fault for doing this, and all you Nintendo Defense Force people that think that it is everyone else's fault and not Nintendo's fault for launching 2015 hardware toned down beyond its standard level in 2017 as your console, shut the fuck up. You people should not be allowed to play games at this point because you're just absolute irrational idiots. Enjoy your bare minimum third-party support for the next 5 or 6 years while only playing Nintendo games, so that's all I can say to you. Me, I'll be enjoying my Nintendo Switch for what it is. Why? Because I'm a logical, rational person. And I have other consoles and a PC. Why? Because I like to play games regardless of what platform they're on. Not just going to exclude myself and miss out on a quality experience just because I'm a fucking idiot. Anyway, that's it. I'm Q from Retro Q Gaming. Not going to do my usual outro. Peace.